I was kind of waiting for your hey before I turned the music down.
Hey, that's funny. I
How
try
are
not
you?
to do it the same all the time.
Right?
That's,
It's kind of my cue, though.
that's a good point. That's a good
Right?
point.
It's all good. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am okay. I mean, I would say I'm good, great, and okay. So it has
Yeah.
been an interesting week. Yesterday, I celebrated my 51st birthday.
Woo woo.
Super fun.
Happy
Yeah.
belated birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it was super fun, and,
Yeah.
I worked, which everybody kinda gave me a hard time about that, but, I love what I do, and on Tuesdays is when I teach, Radical Self and Community Care with Sheila, my, co-author, so I didn't wanna miss that regular group because I love those folks, right? And it's
Yeah.
also when I do the reentry meeting for Reforming Arts, love those
Mm,
folks, like,
right.
and then I'm prepping for the upcoming alternate roots week that they do every week, and I'm part of a
Right.
team there. So, like, it was all somebody said, "Why are you working?" We were on the alternate roots call actually, and I said, "Because I didn't want to deprive myself of seeing all you amazing people this week." And
Right.
I like to connect with people, so we're going to take some time off on the weekend, but for the week, it was good. Yeah.
Good. And I'm always an advocate for it's your birthday. Do whatever you want to do. If you want to work and see your people, then go see your people. If you want to do nothing and watch Naruto, then do that too. It's your birthday.
It was so fun because on one of the meetings, our check-in, they said, "What's a fun check-in?" And I said, "Well,
Mm.
I want to hear everybody's favorite birthday traditions. Like,
Oh,
you have a certain birthday tradition." So I want to ask you that, my friend. Do you have a certain birthday tradition?
what it seems like as an adult now is a trip and dinner. So one year I went to Costa Rica. This year we went beachside. We had the show. I worked, and I was on my trip. I get it. I was like, yeah, let me come talk to the ladies. And this year we went and got some delicious Thai food at what is it? I don't want to say it wrong. It's 26 Thai Kitchen and Bar. They have a couple of different locations across the Atlanta area. You ladies know I love supporting female owned businesses, and it was actually named 26 Thai Kitchen because this young lady started it when she was 26. And I'm all about my
What?
female millennial business owners and some good food. So,
Right?
yes, that's where I went for my birthday this
Yeah.
year.
We probably, speaking of young millennial business owners, we should probably introduce ourselves
We
and
should.
officially get this show started.
Okay, let's start. Hi, ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial business owner, the founder of Shealo Glo LLC, an all natural handmade shea butter company. I am a champion for your natural self care and practical business systems.
Hey, y'all, I'm Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, and published author who helps you upgrade your self and community care.
Yes, and together we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the 8 dimensions of wellness.
Yeah, we love to get together every week and have intentional conversations around how to be wise in business relationships and life. And
Yeah,
we like to introduce y'all to some pretty amazing guests, which we have one today too. So,
so excited.
right? We've been I don't want to give any spoiler alerts, but we're also working on season 4. What? Which is
I
right around
know.
the corner. And you'll see with today. Like we have had some phenomenal guests. All the
Yeah, we
like
have.
I love how many amazing women we are connected to.
I mean, through this podcast, I've gotten work during quarantine. I got my life insurance set up. Um, you know what I mean? I have access to a profit first accountant, which I might need help with soon, and outsourcing that. And I love the system that she uses in her company. So I'm excited to be connected and to continue growing the group of women. Yes.
Right? It's so much fun. Yeah, and we're having some interesting conversations too over at Women Connected in Wisdom, our community. So you're also welcome to come join us over there. We're on Mighty Networks, and it is a place to get connected to women, and it is a place to like if you got a new idea, like run it by us. If you have a new class you want to come try out, you have some people that are will greet you with grace and joy, I would say,
I
and
love that.
be supportive. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's important not only to get feedback, but also specific feedback. That's why I love that we cover all 8 dimensions, right? So if you have a course or an idea that's specific to social or specific to something physical, maybe we already have the women in here who are teaching a class or have resources that could be free or, definitely plug into exactly what you need. So that's why I love being part of this group because it helps me do everything else.
Right. Well, we're talking about occupational wellness today, Shannon. So will
Yeah.
you remind our listeners what occupational wellness is?
Absolutely. So, occupational wellness represents the feeling of purpose and productivity in one's chosen profession. This pillar is certainly a key element to what we refer to as work life balance, as an enriched and productive professional life is certainly required to mesh with a healthy personal life.
I love that. Work life balance and an enriched and productive professional life to mesh
It
with
sounds so simple, but
know, like we know as women,
yeah,
most women are caregivers. Not to say that men aren't, but statistics show that most women are caregivers,
right.
whether they're caregiving pets, children, neighbors, adults,
Parents, right.
parents. A lot of I know women in my age range are sandwich generation, so they're parenting both children and
Hmm.
adults,
Hmm.
caregiving both, not parenting both.
Right.
But it can feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so doing that, which is a lot of times unpaid work, in addition to our professions and our occupations, yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to balance sometimes.
And the time is the thing for me, right? When I was working in the restaurant, people say it's either I'm working or I'm off, right? And when you're off, you have free time. And the problem with the word free is when you use the word free, you start thinking it's free and it is absolutely not. So women, we know women historically have statistically been the caregivers. That's a lot of hours, and let's talk about opportunity cost and everything else that goes into taking care of the people that we love. So for me in occupational wellness, the balance of time is what I absolutely did not have when I started my management experience, and that I'm really intentional about now as I have my own business and do
Right.
all this other stuff. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I had a teacher one time tell me that, balance is often an unrealistic goal, but it's the journey towards balance
Hmm.
that I don't remember if I've talked about it on this podcast before or not, but before the pandemic, I would do retreats once or twice a year. And there was this one retreat years ago up in the Appalachian Mountains, and we were on a hike. It was a small hike, and I jumped up on this rock and I did the swan. I think it was a swan pose from yoga, and it's one I was standing on one foot. I was balanced on this rock, and one of my participants and friends in the retreat snapped that picture. And I used that picture for years because it literally, in that 1, 2 seconds, caught me in balance.
Right.
And the reality is, I fell off the rock almost immediately after.
Yeah.
It is the reality is it's hard to maintain balance or perfect
Hmm.
balance or what it is,
Right.
but
Right.
it's that goal and the striving towards it.
Yeah.
And as our guest, we're going to talk with our guest in a little bit. We're going to talk about when there's trauma involved in the workplace. Whether it's that's your work. I
Right.
have worked for years in places that deal with people going through trauma, and as our guest does today, and talking about how do we do that when we are either in personal trauma ourselves or when we work with folks who are going through trauma, which I
Hmm.
think it's an important conversation to have. So
Absolutely.
So should we introduce her?
Of course.
You
I'm excited. I'm excited to
know
talk
I get
about it.
excited every time. So this next guest, y'all, is a community member and a neighbor and a new friend to me. But I am so delighted to introduce y'all to her. I'm gonna read her official bio so I don't mess it up here. Maryam Jordan is responsible for our professional education and training services. She has been working at Mosaic Georgia since September of 2019 and provides training and educational programs for medical professionals, law enforcement, educators, and others who encounter victims of sexual assault and child sexual abuse. Prior to joining our team, she worked in the international affairs arena where she lived, worked, and traveled abroad and conducted many training and educational programs for volunteers and members of the international nonprofit organization. She has been to 5 continents so far. She's a traveler like you are, Shannon, but she still
Yes.
wants to see and experience much more of what our world has to offer. Miriam is a native Atlantean. Okay, wait. Pause, because that's rare, y'all. Miriam is a native Atlantean and moved to Gwinnett County over 10 years ago with her husband and 3 children. In her free time, she enjoys getting outdoors and hiking in the North Georgia mountains with family and friends. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to bring her on here. Hello, Miriam.
Hi, Christine and Shannon. It's so good to
Hey.
be here. Thanks for having me.
Of
Oh,
course.
we are so delighted to have this conversation with you.
Yes,
Let's start with how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing good. I didn't take my lunchtime walk that I normally take, but in spite of that, I'm still doing fine. It's been a busy day at
Good.
work, so
I love that. So you usually take a lunchtime walk every day?
I do. I try. Yes,
Mm.
I do. I kind of eat quickly at my desk, which I know isn't good, but then I go outside and walk for about 30 minutes. I try, and and it gets hot here in Atlanta, so sometimes if the heat is bad, I don't do it, but I really do try to do that every day.
Look at you
Mm.
dropping that nugget of wisdom in action like in the first 30 seconds for our listeners.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. So that's one way you balance stress with
Exactly.
occupational wellness.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
tell us a little bit about Mosaic Georgia and
Yes.
what you do and what a little bit of the services they provide to the community. Because I want to set our listeners up to know why it might be a little bit of a stressful place that you work at.
Right. Just maybe. But right. So Mosaic Georgia is a sexual assault and children's advocacy center, and our mission is to take action and guide change for the safety, health, and justice for our children and adults who've been impacted by sexual violence and abuse. So we have been actually in the Gwinnett County community since 1986. We started at the Gwinnett Rape Crisis Center, and then we've just expanded to serve children and becoming a children's advocacy center and sexual assault center as well. The services that we offer are extensive. It's like everything under one roof. So, when a victim does come to us, we refer to them as clients. They have advocacy services. So, we're giving them that emotional support that they need. Children also can receive forensic interviews for those cases that do involve law enforcement, where they need to get to the bottom of what exactly happened in the situation. We provide forensic medical care for both children and adults, and we also have counseling service and support groups that we offer here, legal services. We have a 24-hour crisis line where we're responding to anyone who calls us. Either we will help them address their need or we'll refer them out if they've experienced sexual assault or know someone who has. And back to what I do, as you said before, we do prevention education and also professional education and training. So we train nurses to become sexual assault nurse examiners. We also go into hospitals and medical schools, teaching the doctors and residents there how to have a trauma informed response to those victims of sexual assault. And we are also training law enforcement, as you said in my bio, all segments of the community. Definitely schools. We go into our local schools and work with social workers and counselors as well. So we really try to offer everything that we can in the area of sexual assault, just to educate people and to really teaching them about having that trauma informed response, and then also working with the victims themselves as they experience that, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. Like, I hate that it's a needed service, and I am grateful that it exists in our community. Um,
Yes.
I have told you before when I was in grad school, I did my year-long internship with the Children's Assessment Center in Houston, an advocacy center much like Mosaic, Georgia. And
Yes.
those services are invaluable to people who have gone through trauma like that. And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? How do you have occupational wellness?
Right. Well, we started off. I just mentioned my walk at lunch. In addition to that, I like to journal. For me, it helps just to, write down my thoughts. I don't do it every day. That's my goal, but I may journal, 2 or 3 times a week. I do wake up every morning, sort with, purpose, quiet time, just to try to set my intention for the day of how I want my day to go. So all of those things sort of help me stay focused and grounded, and to have incorporate that a little bit of self-care every day as much as I can.
I love that. Those are all really important things. Um, how long have you been working there, Miriam?
In 2 years, in September, it'll be 2 years. September
Oh,
this year, 2 years.
congrats. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You can even feel it as you say the words. Like I feel it when I think about this, because of course I think about the people who've been through this trauma in my own life, and it's a heavy topic. Like it is
Right.
a heavy topic to think about and talk about.
Right.
And we also know that it impacts. What are the statistics now about how many
Right.
women it impacts?
I mean, almost, I think about 6 out of 10 women have experienced a sexual assault, and the numbers are just going up. They're definitely not going down. Even
Right?
just in terms of the caseload that we've seen here in the last couple of months, it's, we're seeing like 40 to 70 cases a month this
Oh, wow.
spring. So we had a little bit of a slowdown during, COVID pandemic, but now things have really picked up. I mean, things were not slow during the pandemic, but they've just even
People
increased
just
more
weren't
so
coming
now
in.
that things have opened up. Right.
Right. Right. Well, that I had that question is if things got worse during the pandemic, because I have a history as a social worker of working with children who had been abused, and it always was worst during times of crisis. And so I
Hmm.
can only imagine that when people are under stress, financial
Yes.
stress or emotional stress, or
Yes.
that's when a lot of those things happen. And
Hmm.
so I'm glad that people are seeking out your services and
Right.
coming in for help. Yeah.
Yeah, and we do think that there actually was an increase over COVID, but was because schools were closed. The reports that would usually come in through teachers or counselors, school nurses were not coming in, obviously, and even people going to hospitals for routine things or even minor ER visits. They were opting to try to solve those issues at home, or maybe go to urgent care or something like that. So
Right.
we saw a slowdown, but it was not for the reason that you think. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Shannon, do you have some questions or comments?
Yeah, so I know that it said the children's resources were added after the program was started, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm not part of a family and I see somebody who may or may not be being abused, how did you say it? What is the correct trauma informed response to that?
Right. Well, first of all, if you really do suspect that, I definitely encourage you to call us, to call our crisis line and report it. There are mandated reporters in the community, people like teachers and school counselors and things like
Right.
that, and nurses, people that work in hospitals, anyone that works with a child is a mandated reporter, and even us as community members should consider ourselves mandated reporters. So if we are suspecting that, then I would definitely urge you to call our crisis line. And I can, I don't know, Christine, I can put it in the chat for you to run that through on the
You
table a
bet.
little bit
And
later.
we will make sure we put it in our show notes for folks too.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So I would say call the crisis line. You know, definitely. But even just in terms of interacting with that mother or that family, if you're thinking something is going on, I think the starting place is to first tell them what you think may be happening, and just make them feel like it's not so horrible. Because I think a lot of reasons that sexual assault and even sometimes child sexual abuse doesn't get reported is because there's so much shame affiliated with it. And
Mhm.
people are just ashamed. There's a lot of self blame that happens. And so we need to let the parent and the child know that this is not your fault. This is not right. And that it
Right.
should definitely be reported to the police. And even with adults, in the case of us serving adults, it's up to that person who's over 18 if they want to report what happened to them or not. They have that choice. And so, as an adult, they can involve law enforcement or not. But even so, they should still seek help or counseling help or some kind of therapy for that, even if they don't want to go through with any legal action against the person. But even for young adults or any age adult, we serve all age adults, but any adult 18 or over can definitely still get our services through our forensic medical exam. So even if they do not want to report what happened to them, they can still come to us and get a forensic medical exam at no cost to them. And we will hold the evidence that we collect. And in the event that they decide they would like to report later, then the evidence has been collected and we can do that for them. We can also
Mhm.
help them with any legal services that they may need, or with temporary protective orders if that's a need, or even for counseling if they need to be in a support group, or even one-on-one counseling. We can either do it in-house or refer them out to another agency or counselor that would be able to help them.
Okay.
Oh, Miriam, that is such a huge gift for our community. One of the things I learned very early on, I was a baby social worker, and when I got my master's degree, I was naive enough to think that like every therapist could deal with sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And then when I went through my training and realized that, I mean, therapists are just humans, right? And they're
Of
trained
course.
too. But there is a special type of training for somebody that is dealing with somebody who's been through a sexual assault or long
Yes.
term sexual abuse. Because sometimes therapists have a hard time talking about sex, just like regular people have a hard time talking
Right.
about sex. So
That's
it's
right.
important that you get connected with a therapist that has the skills that
Yes.
can talk about it and work with you on it, because not all therapists are equal when it comes to
Exactly.
this stuff.
That's
So
so true. That's so true. And I know what we always teach and train on in terms of having a trauma informed response is really just letting the person feel like they're in control. Because when sexual assault happens, obviously someone took control from them. And so we always want to give them choices when they enter our building. We always just, want to ask them questions, open ended questions, never leading questions or judgmental questions. So we always just want to let them know that they are in control. You're safe now, and you are in control from this point forward, and you can, uh, you know, we will support you with whatever you decide. And with adults, in terms of reporting or not reporting, it's not your fault, and so we always just want to, make them be in control and feel like they are in control to try to give them that back to what was stolen from them back to them.
Right. Right. And I hear what you're saying, even though it won't be the same now here where you are, you have options, and these are the options that we're providing for you. And I wanted to ask because I've been through training like this. I was an RA on campus and had residents and had to go through the conversation. And oh, actually, it's not just about, of course, I want you to feel comfortable, but I actually have to tell somebody now because now we got to file a report or do all this stuff through the school. So
Hmm.
outside of conversations like that, when somebody might have a position where they know they probably come into contact with it, I don't think what to do is widely talked about.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to
Yeah.
ask for our listeners, even me
Yeah.
having, known people's stories in my life or having these positions, I still usually think about women. I usually don't think about this whole group of children. What about them? What do you
Right.
do if you're that person that sees a child? So thank you for the information.
Of course. And I just wanted to add, you mentioned that you are an RA. I have a son
Yeah.
who's been an RA as well. And we actually do offer trainings for RAs on some of our local college campuses in Gwinnett County because it's just such a need. We all know how prevalent it is on college campuses. So hopefully most of those RAs around the country now are getting that training, but they definitely are in Gwinnett County.
Good.
Well, and I also just want to shout out, we know it's more prevalent abuse with women, but it does happen to men too. So
Yes.
for our listeners that may not know that, yeah, sexual assault, it does not discriminate against class or gender or race. It can happen to anybody, anywhere. And that, I know when I was going through the training, as a master level social worker, I came home. I will never forget this. Like, as a newbie, you're handed all the group cases, and I would read a case and I would go on to the next one. And I remember coming home and telling my husband, we are turning on our alarm and our children are never allowed outside ever again. And he was like, what are you talking about? I go, I can't really tell you. I'll deal with it with my therapist. Because the post-traumatic stress, like the secondary trauma can happen too for people in this field if you are not paying attention. So that's another thing, which I know you are really well versed in, Maryam, but like the self and community care for our professionals, for our nurses, for our doctors, which we all know a lot of them are struggling right now after COVID and the grief and loss that they're experiencing. But yeah, it is trauma. I was telling someone the other day, I mean, our country has been through trauma for the last 2 years with this pandemic. And we talked on the show last week about we hit the 600,000 deaths have been reported in the United States alone. And so that collective grief, which is trauma, and that all of us have been doing our jobs going through this at the same time. And it affects people different ways. So I would love for you to talk a little bit, Maryam, about what is trauma and how can you tell if somebody's having a trauma response? And we may not know what's causing it, but how do you identify that?
Yeah, I mean, trauma is really just, it happens, when you have been usually violated in some way, or just your life has just been interrupted, in a way that you don't expect. As you just said, all of us have collectively gone through the trauma of this pandemic that's not even over yet. And so, we really, I think we quickly as people, we develop quick coping mechanisms. And so it makes us think that we are actually don't have PSTD, or that we're not, affected by these things. But I think that the truth of the matter is that is actually not the case. I think that, people who are not, when they encounter a victim and they don't really have a trauma-informed response, they are, passing judgment. They are, just making assumptions, especially in the case of sexual assault. The victims blame themselves, but sometimes, family may blame you based on what you were wearing, or were you drinking alcohol, things like that. And so people take for granted, what true consent means. And, consent has to be given in these cases. And so I think, a lot can just be taken away from a person when consent is not given, and when so many judgments are passed about, the victim and the people. And really drug facilitated and alcohol facilitated sexual assault is really the highest level of sexual assault that occurs, especially in those over 18, going up to teenagers and into adulthood. So it really is, a tough situation. And that's why we find our training at Mosaic Georgia is so important to, to make sure that people know how to have that trauma-informed response to the victims as they are working with them.
Right. And I just have to throw out there, the first one is believe the victim.
Yes.
Believe them.
Yes.
And I was so shocked when I got into this field about how many people don't believe, or how many people blame the victim. And it is heartbreaking. And that just compiles and piles on the trauma, because then you have different levels of relationship, like strains in relationships and things like that. So yeah, it is a big deal. And we all know, we've all seen it, like especially with systemic abuse in different religious organizations and things like that. that there is a lot of judgment, or there's a lot of hiding, and that it's a secret, and that we're not going to talk about it, and then it keeps
Right.
going on, or the abuser keeps happening because it's not talked about. So
Right. Yeah. And I did want to just add, Christine, that there is a campaign, an actual national campaign that's called "Start by Believing."
mm,
In the arena of sexual assault, in Violence Against Women International. That's sort of one of their taglines and things that they promote. But only like 2 out of 10 reports of sexual assault may be false reports, and so that is such a low number. I mean, it's actually no, I misquoted. It's more like 98% are telling the truth and 2% are not.
right.
So it's very rare that somebody would claim sexual assault if it in fact didn't happen, because, as I said before, there's so much shame and such a stigma attached to it that that's not the choice that most people are going to go. If they want to lie or manipulate something, they may choose something else. It does happen, but again, it's extremely rare.
Right. And what I found was when it did happen, it was usually because there was past trauma that had not been dealt with. And
Right.
yeah, it was, oh, yeah. It's a big deal. And so we do need to believe when somebody comes forward or shares with us, or
Yeah.
um and I think also acknowledge the what it takes for
Hmm.
somebody to share. Like
Right.
acknowledge how big of a deal that is. And
Yeah.
yeah, and if we're not capable of holding space, if you don't know how to do it, or you don't,
Hmm.
to be calm about it and get them resources like Mosaic Georgia, or if you're listening to us in a different country or a different town, look and see what resources are available in your area.
Right.
And if they're not, they may need to be started, because that's how Mosaic Georgia started,
Yeah.
right? Was
That's
the
right.
founder looked around and there wasn't a resource, and she's like, that's not acceptable. And
That's
she
right.
started one.
That's right. That's right. She was just Anne Smiley was in 1986, volunteering in a hospital, and a victim comes in, and the nurses in the ER don't really know how to engage with her and what to do. And so she saw that gap and that need, and so she started the Rape Crisis Center in the Gwinnett Rape Crisis Center in 1986, and then it just grew from there. We obviously have renamed ourselves to Mosaic Georgia, and we serve now adults and children. So yeah, yeah.
That is
I
powerful work.
Yes, and I did just want to correct myself, Christine, because I did also misquote another statistic earlier. So 9 out of 10 sexual assault victims, rape victims, are female. So 90% who of those who are raped are female, and then 10% are male. Yeah,
Thank you for giving us those statistics. I
yeah,
mean,
Hmm.
it's hard to hear the statistics, and it's
yeah.
important to acknowledge, and to we can't heal if we don't talk about the truth. You
Right, right. Yeah,
Hmm. And I think when I think about people not believing it, right? Especially with psychology. So I have a psychology degree, Miriam, and
hmm,
it really interests me why people think the way they do about certain things when it might not make sense to me, right? Or why they react a certain way. But when I was growing up, Law and Order SVU was one of my favorite shows, right? I feel like I grew
yeah.
up with Olivia, and
Right.
but
We
but
all.
and all her haircuts, right?
Right,
Um,
right,
but as a psychology major, now I'm thinking, well, it might not necessarily, I would say it's definitely not necessarily healthy to have entertainment that shows things like this, right? And then people get desensitized, just like we talk about with the news. And
right,
now when stuff happens in real life, we're
right,
more likely to minimize it and less likely to believe it because we feel like we see it all the time and we
right.
know how this story wraps up in 30 minutes, but that's not the
Yes,
reality of the situation when you're talking about, a young child and court systems and all of the
right.
different things that go in at any situation that we could be talking about, no matter the person's age. I think
Right.
that that doesn't help.
You're right. You're right. And there actually is something called the CSI effect, to where people think what
Mm,
they see on TV, is how it is in real life, and it's oftentimes very different. The cases unfortunately do not go to trial that fast, and the results don't come back from the crime lab that fast. So
right.
there's just a process that happens that in reality that's quite different than what you see on TV, even though all those things are done. But it's usually at a much, at a slower pace. And then, obviously not as glamorous, and you don't
Right.
just catch the bad guy. Like you say, and wrap it up in 30 minutes, tie it up in a bow, and it's over.
Right.
So that's not the
Right.
case. And obviously, people who are victims are affected for years and years to come. It takes a lot of work for them to heal from their trauma.
Miriam, when I think about this, I'm a doer and I like to have action items. And
Yeah.
we have a hashtag called Wisdom in Action. And when you think about what can regular folks do? Like
Hmm.
one of the things that's bubbling up for me, and I'm going to misquote it, but there were a couple of years ago, we were advocating at the Capitol for because there was such a huge backlog of rape kits that had not
Hmm.
been processed. So there was
Yeah.
a time that we were called to action to get some legislation. Is there anything like that going on that we need to know about, or is there a place that listeners can donate to the Mosaic Georgia? Like, tell us some action items that we
Yeah, well,
can do.
action items, definitely you can send us donations. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, so you can go to our website, mosaicgeorgia.org, and donate anytime, of course. And just recently, a bill was passed, and the tracking system has gotten much better. And there is going to actually be a tracking system for sexual assault kits going forward, at least in the state of Georgia, that is, where that will definitely make the backlog hopefully go away totally. And we've actually made some improvements with that, in the last few years. It was bad several years ago. It's gotten better, but now there's actually going to be an electronic tracking system so that at all times we can know exactly where those kits are, what's the status, have they been processed by the GBI crime lab yet or not. So we're very excited with that. And CJCC, who we're working with, has been very instrumental with working on that.
That is fantastic. And that's good news and hope. Like sometimes with these big issues, like you feel like, things aren't getting better or things. So thank you for that update and giving us a little hope around this.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
I want to take us on a little bit of a left turn here because I want to go
Okay.
back to your bio and
Mhm.
I want to talk about you being a hiker. When we talk about occupational wellness and balance of life work balance,
Yeah.
um, tell us about that piece of your life and how that helps bring you into balance.
Yeah, well, that's just one of my favorite pastimes is hiking or walking in the woods. I often will go with my daughter or sometimes my whole family, sometimes a friend, but we just really enjoy, finding a new nature trail. Lots of times, again, in the North Georgia mountains or somewhere new. And I just love to walk along water and see the animals. I mean, seeing heron fly by and just, really beautiful birds and hear the water rushing in the stream and things like that. So that's just I don't know, my sort of quick local go to that I can do that's not expensive. I can just go drive my car and go to a local park where those trails are there, and it just really helps to center me and kind of calm me down and recharge for the next week to come. So I try to do that on as many weekends as I can. I'm not always able to do that. Obviously, if it's a very busy weekend, I've got errands or I've got, sports games or whatever it may be, something with the kids, then, even something as simple as on a Saturday morning, taking my coffee to the back porch and just looking at the squirrels and the chipmunks and the birds and, in my backyard and, the wind blowing through the trees. That for me, that just is, I don't know, it's very therapeutic for me. And like I said, journaling, sometimes I'll take my journal out there, write down my thoughts for
Mm.
the day or the week. So all of those things are really good. There's something I'd recently discovered also that's called, I discovered it, it's not like it's a new thing, but it's called rebounding. So it's those little mini trampolines that you jump on. Those are so much fun. And I don't know, it's just like, it's like when you were a kid jumping on your parents' bed and they would always, get on you or whatever. But I love jumping on the bed when I was little. And so then I'm like, I found an adult way to jump on the bed. I got a rebounder. So
I
we
love
do
that.
workouts. You can jump on them. They're like workout routines you can do. You can just jump on them or walk on them. You can jog. You can sprint on them. So they're very versatile. They're not super expensive, but I will put a disclaimer that they're not all created equal. And you should invest a little bit of money in them because the really cheap ones, you actually can injure yourself. So I would advise, doing your research and getting a pretty decent quality rebounder. But I
That
love it. I think it's popular in the UK and some other places, but it's a good, quick, just kind of get your blood rushing. And especially if you need to get some energy for something and you don't want to do the coffee, then that comes in handy too.
I love that you shouted out the UK because I was looking at our stats today, and we have listeners in the UK. So
good.
I hope
That's
you'll
awesome.
give us some comments and let us know if they use a
Right.
rebounder. That would be really fun. And
Yes.
that would be really cool. Well, I mentioned earlier that we do a wisdom in action. Shannon, will you explain a little bit more about that? And
Yes, so wisdom in action is about one thing. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves or anybody else, right? So, what is one thing that you're going to do this week to be more intentional about your occupational wellness? And we go through and say what ours are. And mine is um, actually, what is mine? I will say that mine is actually, I'm going to flip it. And instead of making it about my planner and all the things I need to do, which are still on the list, I will make it about going outside and continuing to be grounded so that when I come to get this stuff ready, I'll be able to be focused and centered.
That's great.
Yes. What about
what
you,
about
Miriam? What do you think?
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought maybe Christine was next.
oh,
So,
hi.
so for me, so I'm sort of on a health journey, changing my diet and just eating healthier. I've just started a cleanse a couple of days ago, so just staying on my plan to do my cleanse so that I can be healthier and be better and have more energy naturally. That's my
Right.
plan.
Is it
I,
easy for you to eat clean at work?
Yes, but it takes a lot of preparation. So obviously, I
Right.
bring everything from home, and so that's what I'm eating at work. So yes, if I snacked on what was available to me in the office, I would be in trouble, and so that's
Right.
gotten me in trouble in the past. So I'm really trying to stay true to this cleanse and stay on plan with what I bring from home. So
Good.
I'm
I
pulling
like
in
that.
Cecile Armstrong was one of our guests a couple of weeks ago, and she's
Yes.
listening today.
oh
And
great,
she says, yes, go outside. So I
Yes.
think that's her wisdom in
It
action.
is. It is
yeah.
Cecile's wisdom.
Thanks for
You're
listening.
affecting me.
And yeah, because when she was on, we were talking about putting our feet in the grass and we took
Yeah.
pictures of our toes. I don't think we ever shared those with listeners, but we
Mhm.
shared it with each other scenes that we
Yes.
committed to going outside and putting our feet in the grass. So it was really
Yeah.
cool. My wisdom in action this week in regards to occupational wellness is literally on my calendar, y'all.
Good.
I am scheduling my lunch break and a little thing that says rest because I realized because I work from home and I make my own schedule, you would think that, oh, you'd schedule a lunch break, but it's
Mhm.
not like an office. And sometimes I look up and it's 3 o'clock and I haven't eaten and I'm wondering why I'm getting a little hangry or a little cranky. So my wisdom in action is scheduling my lunch break and taking some rest time. So for me, rest time is I'll go out on my front porch and disconnect from electronics for 15 minutes while I'm on a break. Because it's so easy working from home to just always be connected. And for me, it is at least. Maybe
Yes.
I'm just avoiding doing laundry, but that's another show. So thank you so much for being with us today, Miriam. Thank you for your wisdom and
Yes.
the work you do in this world. It is so needed and valued. And I am grateful that you are a neighbor and in our community and that we got to meet and know more about you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Of
Thank
course.
you. More soon, I'm sure.
Yes,
Yes.
I hope so.
Oh my gosh, what a big conversation,
So big. And
right?
I think my favorite thing is knowing that I have more than 911 to call.
Right?
Hopefully I won't need it. But I'm thankful for the resource because we need resources like this. I hate hearing stories about people going from trauma to trauma because other people don't know how to handle situations. So being
Right.
prepared and plugged in, I love it.
Well, and when we talk about community resources,
Hmm.
there is a lot of discussion right now in different parts of the United States about the defund the police movement and the
Mm.
and a lot of what that's about is not it's about taking some of that money and up and increasing our community resources, right? And I know our local police department works very hand in hand with Mosaic Georgia and they work together. But like you said about it's an option to not call the police, it's an option to get help in another manner, um, which, especially for folks who have had trauma in that regard, for our Black and Brown brothers and sisters that sometimes
Right.
have that living in their bodies, it's a good thing to have a community resource that is,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, and I want to make sure to be specific. I'm not saying that the police don't need to be called. I understand there's still a list of things to go through, but um, yeah,
having
specifically so
support
that,
while you do it, because that's,
yeah, the having the support while
I
you
was
do it.
tour Mosaic, Georgia, and it is a really nice facility, and you
Yeah,
can have basically somebody hold your hand through it. That you have the counselors and you have the intake folks and you have people. And when I
yeah,
was in there, they had all the protections for the COVID-19. They're taking
hmm,
care of our community, and
good.
that's a big thing for me
Yeah,
is helping community care, and they are an organization that values that. So I am
absolutely.
grateful.
Good.
Well, my friend, and also Miriam, hello. How delightful was she? And nature, she's one of us. Like, let's go
Yes,
on a
definitely.
hike
Me,
together.
you, her, Cecile, get your shoes ready. We're going on a hike.
Right? It's
Yes,
yeah, absolutely. Um, so talking about self-care, my friend,
yes.
tell me, tell me about what's going on over at Shealo Glo and what's happening over there regarding self-care and community care.
Christine, I don't even think that you're ready for this, okay? And you know information that other people don't know. You already know about the strawberry mango samples and the new cards and everything that we have coming out. So Shealo Glo, if you ladies do not know, again, it's a handmade shea butter business. Right now we have shea butter, dark brown sugar scrub, and a multi-use oil. But outside of the individual products, what I don't think you're ready for, Christine, is this subscription that is actually live right now. Today is the first
What?
day. Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, tell me more, and where do people find it?
Yes. So ShayloGlow.com as always. But everybody loves Shaylo Glow anyways, right? Everybody who buys it constantly buys it over and over again. So I want you to be able to take care of your physical wellness, Christine, and your financial wellness and lock in that price that works for you. And then you don't have to keep ordering it. You don't have to tell me, hey, I need a 4 ounce mango madness because it's going to come to your door every month already.
Okay, is it my fault that this subscription got created because I keep texting you or calling you?
No,
She's like,
but
sign up and just make it automatic.
right. No, I love it. And I mean, it's motivation. I know I need it. I'm going to use it whether or not the company is here or not, right? But you using it consistently. People in New Jersey, people in Maryland, people across the country. I want to make sure that we get that. So that is what I'm thinking about for self-care. I love shea butter because of all the natural things that it does for you. So yeah, we're gonna have more of it, but I will get all that together to bring it to the ladies.
I love it. Well, we'll put a link to that in our show notes. And in regards to community care, one of the
Yes,
things I love that your company does is the Shea Rose. So, will
yes.
you give a shout out about the Shea Rose so folks know what we're talking about?
Absolutely. So exactly what we were talking about, right? Let's say, for example, I think Miriam be somebody that if you know Miriam, she would be a good candidate. She's out in the community, um, being very intentional about where she works, what she does with her time, making a difference in the lives of other women. But like she didn't get her walk today, maybe she hasn't been taking, the space and time that she needs for herself. And that's what the Shayro is about, giving a free gift of Shealo Glo. We will take care of it on your behalf, and you get to nominate somebody in your life, in your community, that has made a difference and a change in your life. So if you have a few people in mind, email them to shayloglo@gmail.com with the subject my Shayro so that I know why
We
you're
get
emailing me.
announce are you announcing June's next show? Because
I am.
next week is the last day of the month.
Yes, it
So
is.
we
So
get
it's
to find out the Shayro for June next
yes.
show. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. I love
Yep.
it.
And if you ladies have a recommendation or excuse me, a nomination that is due by the end of the week so that we can get the choice Shayro for the month and make sure that she gets honored in time.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I
Thank
love
you.
it so much.
Yes.
Well, my friend, it's always the bittersweet moment where we have to
I
wrap
know.
it
I
up.
know.
It's like
Yes.
I love our weekly conversations and our listeners, and I am grateful.
Yes.
So I hope, folks, if you want to continue the conversation, you can join us over at womenconnectedinwisdom.com. You can find us on our social media. We'd love it if you would hashtag your wisdom in action and tag us because we want to see what awesomeness is happening out there in
Yes.
all the 8 dimensions of wellness. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Okay, ladies. And after you join the community and get plugged into us. Outside of that, don't forget to be well, be wise, and be whole. We will see you next Wednesday at 5. Okay.
Looking forward to it.